Get to J Pat. He's here.
Yeah, we'll continue the conversation tomorrow. Like I said, Harmon and I, but now it's time for the newest contributor of Canucks Army to join the show. Jeff Patterson is here. Aaron, pull it up. We're looking for a title for the column that Jeff is going to write every Sunday. We announced it on Twitter moments ago. Jeff, I'll let you get a word in soon, but Aaron, pull up this graphic we've got here of the beautiful Pattersons Ponderings graphic here. We're having a little technical difficulty, but I'm going to rattle off some of the names because we're looking for a name. And Jeff, my first question to you, other than how your day is going to be, off top of your head, which one do you like the most out of these names? The Pat Down, Pattersons Ponderings, J-Pat's Journal, Patterson's Perspective, Pattersons Pulse, and Do Something Sunday. What's your favorite out of those?
Pattersons Pulse. Sounds like I'm going to be taking my blood pressure every week and posting the results on Canucks Army. Look, I've got a lot of mileage over the years off the Pat Down. I can't remember who came up with that one, but credit to somebody. I think it was a listener generated back in the 1040 days. So, it works, right? Like after games, if I'm shaking down a game and coming up with thoughts like the Pat Down. And, I used to editorialize back in the radio days. So, can it carry over to this endeavor? Yeah, possibly, I suppose. Try and just milk as much mileage as possible out of the Pat Down. Quads is just like, is this a thing, Faber? Like, is he just an absolute stickler on alliteration? Because, like, from that day in Victoria where he was so excited about Patterson's Ponderings and, like, just got absolutely annihilated along press row, and yet he's still, like, 2 weeks later, banging the drum for Patterson's Ponderings, which I can tell you will not be the title of the call.
Yeah, I think Quad's like, when we're laughing at him, he thinks we're laughing with him. So he thinks it's actually a very good idea that we're going with Patterson's Ponderings. That is not going to pass by. As the associate editor of Canucks Army, I will not allow that. I'm the idea guy. He's the intelligent guy, and that's not going to float with us. I think Pat Down sounds great. It's something you've had, and people know that as well. But we'll have to see. The Pulse thing, we'll see. We'll have to see what goes on with that one as well. I think we might be able to work into it, but alliteration is a big thing. I know we were even talking about that earlier today, Quads, with another sponsor coming on board here, which I actually floated the alliteration into.
Yeah, you're all on alliteration too. That's the thing, Jeff.
You're floating. There you go.
There we go. Exactly. I think, but yeah, Jeff, we're super excited to get you on at CA. I know it's what was it? I think I saw in the article 10 years you were there at CA a long time ago. This isn't the first run for you with the good folks there.
No, look what Drance has created all those years ago. In fact, Drance brought me on board the first time, and I do think it was a full decade ago. It was around 2013, back in the day where the idea of a blog having access to the locker room was just like this incredible, like people in the NHL couldn't wrap their head around it. Certainly people in the Canucks front office couldn't wrap their head around it. And how times have changed, and it's great. It's progressive now, and the fact that the work that you guys are doing, it's almost laughable to think that there was a time when that was, just looked so far down upon by the organization. So Drance wanted to bring me in as a mainstream guy that had some access. And then the Canucks were like, your press pass says 1040. If you're going to be contributing to the Canucks Army, we've got a bit of an issue here. So that was the first time around, pretty short-lived. Second time around was, I remember, Drance orchestrated. I traveled. In fact, got to go to the draft in Buffalo, 2016. Remind me who the Canucks took in the first. No, don't. Let's not do that on the day that he signs over in Sweden and his days in North America are officially done. Talking about Ole Levy, not Drance. Yeah. And again, I was sort of in between jobs and looking for an opportunity to have my voice heard in the market. And Tom's been good that way. And, so the friendship was formed long ago. He brought me in twice. Let's hope third time's the charm. And we'll continue doing what we do. And that is covering this hockey club and just providing content that I know that this hungry fan base wants and can't get enough of. And so I look forward to having an outlet, a weekly outlet. And again, this is on top of all of my, I'm not, exclusive to Canucks Army. This isn't a career change. This is me coming on the weekends. We've established it'll be a Sunday column. Sundays are sort of relaxed generally, maybe a chance for people to sit back and just consume whatever content I can come up with. So I'm looking forward to get going. Timing is great here. Obviously the start of the season next week. So haven't come up with the first column idea just yet. Working through that with Dave. We'll have something for you though, as we launch to be named column on Sunday at Canucks Army.
Pattersons Ponderings. So in
I've got
my
resignation letter typed up actually right now. It's just sitting here in a file.
Did you have any ponderings at this Abbotsford game? You were there last night. You obviously made the drive out to Abbotsford. We were just talking about it. We were talking about how it was kind of hard to have any takeaways from that game. But Jeff, you won't disappoint us. What takeaways, if any, did you have from that game? Ponderings, one might call them.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like one of those split squad games of the past that usually kick off the preseason with the lineups that the two teams iced this late in the preseason. It was a dull game. I mean, let's be honest. The shots were 4-2 in the first period in the Canucks' favor. Seattle had 2 shots. So the Kraken didn't have a shot in the first 15 minutes, and it kind of felt that way, although they possessed the puck an awful lot in the first period, I thought. But, and they finished the night with 15 shots on goal. I actually thought Casey DeSmith had to make the better saves than, the 2 goaltenders that the Kraken used. I heard you guys, so just before I joined, and I think I'm like a lot of people, you couch everything with, yes, it's the preseason, but there are some red flags here. There's no alarm bells ringing, but there are some red flags. And it does come back to this idea that they scored 8 goals in 5 games and obviously got shut out 10-0 in that first one. But if you dig a little deeper, I mean, 5 goals at even strength. So that is a concern. Beyond that, the 8 goals, 3 from Quinn Hughes, last night from Carson Soucy. There's half of the Canucks offense in the preseason from defensemen. Now, they were dead last in the NHL in terms of goals from defensemen in the league last year. So maybe that's a silver lining that they're getting some offense from the back end. Can that continue? And maybe it's going to have to continue. Like maybe they're going to lean on a little bit of contributions from the blue line while some of these other guys sort things out. But I just think by this stage of the preseason, you want others than Quinn Hughes and Thatcher Demko to be your best players. You know what you're getting from Demko and Hughes, and that's great. They look like they're in midseason form and ready to go. But yeah, I mean, this supporting cast, we've been told all summer that the Canucks are deeper and therefore they're going to be better. And there are going to be some nights when Elias Pettersson's held in check or he just doesn't have his good stuff going. And that's when you need others. And so, you think back at opening day of training camp and Höglander and Podkolzin, getting this opportunity on these lines, legitimate NHL lines. And one guy's now in Abbotsford and the other guy might be the extra forward when they open next week against the Oilers. And so that's been disappointing, but it goes way beyond that. Anthony Beauvillier has just been silent through the preseason, kind of whiffed on the chance at the side of the net last night. Dakota Joshua has not had a particularly good camp and preseason. Maybe got a little better than that opening night when he got called out by the coach, but on and on it goes. Nils Zaman, you would have just liked somebody somewhere along the line to sort of step up and have a moment or two through the preseason that we all take note of. Instead, it's been this search party for anybody that you would consider a depth scorer on this hockey club. And so I do have some reservations that this team is any better in that regard. The names change, but ultimately what you're getting from your fourth liners, you go back to Beagle and Schaller and Lamico and Highmore. And, last year it was Curtis Lazar was here. And there's no bottom line for any of these guys. And I think in the modern NHL, you have to have something, raise the bar a little bit in this market. The bar's been so low for so long now. I'm not expecting those guys to be game breakers. But if the Canucks are going to have success and get better as an organization, they do have to win some of these battles at the fringes. And that's where it's not enough. I keep saying too many guys are just wearing a uniform here in the preseason. And that's what it kind of feels like for me.
It's interesting because you look at that third line, the way we kind of see it set. It's going to be Beauvillier, it's going to be Suter, it's going to be Garland. There might be some names moved around here, but you think about the offense that could come from that trio in a third line role. And I feel like on paper, you're thinking, okay, I'm feeling pretty confident about the production I'm going to get out of my third line. We've seen that line together a lot in the preseason, get a good amount of games together. Haven't really seen much of them. What's your expectations for that third line when they're getting bottom 6 matchups in the regular season?
Yeah, I don't know about you, Chris, because you were there last night and Quads, you probably watched the stream, but I actually thought P.S. Suter was one of the better Canucks last night, and he got an elevated role playing in an offensive situation, right? They didn't have Paterson, they didn't have Miller, so essentially the top line center with Kuzmenko and Beauvillier. I thought P.S. Suter had some nice moments in a game that was lacking a lot of them. I think he's quietly had a decent preseason. I think you see the smarts and the savvy almost every time he's out there. And so I'm excited. I think it was a good signing, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. I do wonder if Dakota Joshua is going to find his way onto that line, just because we know Tocchet loves his wall work and board battles and big bodies and all those types of things. And is there enough heft if you go with the trio that you mentioned? But these are things that are going to be ironed out here in the final preseason game, and then obviously practices up until that opening night against the Oilers next week. So I'm encouraged by what I've seen from Pius Suter. I think he and Garland basically have been in lockstep since day one of training camp, and I think that's something that they are going to continue there. Is this the year that Connor Garland gets to the 20-goal mark for the first time in Vancouver? Again, you want to believe so. Even in a third-line capacity, raise the bar. It's okay to have some expectations. I'm not thinking that he's going to be a 40-goal scorer, but I don't think it's too much to ask at his price point to be a 20-goal scorer. And Pius Suter is the best center that he's had in his time here in Vancouver. So, yeah, I mean, I do think that the potential is there for that third line. The fourth line, I still don't know if the fourth line is – I mean, Tocchet has name-checked a few times this week, Bluger with Amon and Studnicka. And so taking the coach's word, that kind of looks like it might be the fourth line. And he said the other day after practice out at UBC that he thinks that can be an identity line. I don't know. That's one of those buzzwords, right? Identity? What is the identity? What is the identity of that line? What's the identity of this hockey club? I'm not sure that anybody fully knows at this point, but I do worry on too many nights that fourth line, as constructed there, I don't know what you're. And there's some penalty killing utility from those guys, obviously, but beyond that, at 5-on-5, I'm not sure what the expectations can really be in terms of offensive output.
Are you buying what we're seeing from the Canucks penalty kill? It was another good night for them last night. We've
penalty
seen
kill,
Suter
it looks and feels different. It just does. And I had somebody push back on social. Imagine that, somebody pushing back on social. But the game against the Oilers the other night, I know that McDavid and Draisaitl weren't here. Yes, context matters. But just watching the Canucks, the way that they're standing guys up at the line, like Carson Soucy, I don't think had a great preseason. But on the penalty kill, he is an eraser at the blue line. He disrupts. He's got the long reach. He's physical, and I do think that's an area that he's contributed. Ian Cole had a bit of a rough go against the Oilers on Saturday, but otherwise, I think I've liked what I've seen from him through camp, and I do think just all of his experience, years in the league, familiarity with Tocchet from their time in Pittsburgh, all those things. I think Ian Cole is going to be a nice addition to this hockey club. Again, he's not going to feature in the highlights very often. I just think he's going to be a calming, steadying influence, and for the most part in the preseason, things have been relatively quiet around him. So, yeah, I mean, that is one thing that is encouraging. Now, dead last, penalty kill sunk them on so many nights last year. Only one way to go, and that's up. How far up? I guess we'll find out. Is it possible? Is there a world in which the biggest strength or biggest weakness of this hockey club the last couple of years could be a strength? I'm not sure that I'm prepared to go that far just yet, but I thought Teddy Bluger looked really good at the game in Edmonton. When the Canucks were there, what was that, just over a week ago? And then you look at like Philip Hronek, I think looked really good. I thought even last night in Abbotsford, and I know people were kind of dumping on him for the first cracking goal, but otherwise, the games that Philip Hronek has played, moves the puck reasonably well. He's been physical. How much are they going to lean on him? Probably an awful lot, but I think that when I look at individual performances just on the evaluation front in these exhibition games, I think Philip Hronek's looked kind of like the player that they hope that he's going to be, and that he's going to have to be, obviously, for this team to take some strides forward. So, yes, penalty kill has looked good. I put that on the list of positives from the preseason, but I also agree with Rick Tocchet, and he said this last night post-game that, double-edged sword. Great that the penalty killing is looking a lot better, but they're taking way too many penalties. And they're coming up on the short end of the penalty count on almost a nightly basis. McWard had 3 the other night against Edmonton. Last night, Brisebois had a couple. So, cut back on the penalties so that maybe you're not doing as much penalty killing, but that's what preseason's for, the evaluation. And that is an area that I do think you can just see it looks and it feels different. And that's a good thing because it has been so dreadful for the last couple of years.
Jeff, biggest story from the weekend, Vasily Podkolzin heading down to the AHL. I'm curious, are you leaning more towards this being a step back or a step towards actually developing Vasily Podkolzin here? What do you think should come from this AHL stint to Vasily Podkolzin?
Yeah, I mean, I want him ultimately to sort of take stock of why other guys were able to get noticed in this preseason. Like Archdeep Baines, people obviously want to see him succeed, but he did the types of things that get noticed. Like Podkolzin, when he was in there, again, one of these guys that just wore a uniform in his preseason game. Like, this isn't his first rodeo. This isn't like I expected more from him. And so I'm going to try to see it as positive that, get him down. And talked a little bit about it post game last night. Like, he wasn't one of the guys that was given the quick recall to play in the game last night. And the coach just said, like, he's in Abbotsford. Just leave him there and let him play. And I kind of agree with that thinking from the organization. Like, to me, that would be mixed messaging if all of a sudden you're recalling Podkolzin after setting him down and it's just this yo-yo. Like, no, he's in Abbotsford now. Like, play him. Hopefully they play him in a bunch of different situations. I hope that he's, in a top 6 role. Certainly, if he's not in a top 6 role in Abbotsford as a 22-year-old first-round top 10 guy, then there are some questions that have to be asked. But I'm a big believer in Jeremy Colleton and the work that he's doing there. The Twins and his hands-on as they've been both at the NHL level and the AHL level. I guess I'm prepared to give this a developmental year, but there does have to be some sort of payoff, because at this time next year, if Vasily Podkolzin arrives as a 23-year-old and still, doesn't have the makings of an NHLer, well, Matt Boldy and Cole Caulfield are out there ripping up the NHL. Like, when you're 23, that's 5 years removed from your draft. Like, it has to happen, or maybe it's not going to happen. So don't want to write the guy off yet. I mean, you just think of the dysfunction of the organization and his time in it with all of the head coaches and management changes and those types of things. But ultimately, I need to see Vasily make some strides. I want the organization to work with him, but a lot of it comes down to the player too. And this just feels like a massive year, almost a make it or break it year for him to be something for the Vancouver Canucks.
Jeff, great stuff as always. Very happy to have you on the team at Canucks Army. Give it some thought. Aaron, do we have it here? Give it some thought, Jeff. Give it some thought.
That's me just out in the weeds with my thoughts, deep in thought. Okay.
All right. Jeff Patterson, ladies and gentlemen. Jeff, thank you for joining us. Much appreciated.
All right, guys. We'll see you at the rink.
Sorry about that, Jeff. Sorry about that. I didn't have anything to do with that.